check has been made and all three have been accepted. One of the issues that we have noticed in the APRs for financial year 2023 were some issues with the reporting of amounts recovered from the close period in the annual performance report. So I would just like to remind you of some of the steps and some of the slides that we already shared with you. The recovered amounts have to respect the contribution rate of the Rural Development Fund. At the time of recovery, the rate of the closed programming period is the one that has to be used. However, at the time of the reuse under the CAP strategic plan, the contribution rate of the specified intervention for which the funds will be reused is the one that has to be used. This is the case also for the annual performance reports. In the APR for financial year 2023, member states also had to report all of the amounts recovered from the closed period, even in case there was no expenditure, which was a little bit of a tricky situation. So one of the changes that we are proposing from the next financial year that you can already see on the picture before you is the indication of the co-financing rate that is applied to the intervention. Multiple member states have contacted us trying to figure out what is the reconciliation calculation done behind this data. And one of the questions we got most often is which co-financing rate has been used. As the system has been set up in an automatic manner, and in some cases the member states indicated multiple co-financing rates, it was very difficult to find the right way of going about it and finding the right co-financing rate to use for the calculation. So it's possible that the reconciliation issues in some cases were also caused by this percentage, as we have informed a lot of you via email already. This is why we have decided to add an additional column for the rural development interventions, where we will ask the member states to identify clearly the percentage that they use. Based on that, then we will do the reconciliation. The system will then do the reconciliation calculations. Here you can also see a quick mock calculation as to what we were expecting in the APR. Some of the issues that we have seen most often was that when member states reported the amount recovered from the closed period, they only reported the EU amount. They didn't put it in the perspective of the public expenditure, so they didn't actually apply the co-financing rate on it. So that was one of the technical issues that we saw, so I tried to provide here just a mock-up of a calculation to try to explain this calculation a bit easier and demonstrate it a bit better for you. And also, for more information, you can always find the explanatory note on the reporting of amounts recovered from the closed period in the APR, which has been produced, I think it was submitted, yes, on the 22nd of September 2023. You can find it in Circa BC, either on the GREX meeting that took place in those days, I think on the 26th, or also in the APR, specific APR folder, where you can always find all information related to the APRs. Moving on now to the technical guidelines. We are currently working on an update of the technical guidelines. We are hoping to share this update with the member states potentially by the end of this week or early next week. Our aim is to present the revised technical guidelines. It's going to be version 7, if I'm not mistaken. Version 4. It should be, I think. Okay, the next version of the technical guidelines we will present in the GREX meeting on the 28th of June. One of the aspects that will have changes as well will be Annex 2, which is the annual performance report template. One of the changes you have seen in the previous slide is the addition of the co-financing rate in section 223. The main focus of the technical guidelines and some of the main changes that you will be able to see is an additional guidance for section 1 of the annual performance report. It's not something that was provided in the previous versions of the technical guidelines. They mainly focused on section 2, which is a bit more technical of the data and the XML structure. However, as we noticed a high variation between the data provided by member states in section 1, we wanted to provide some additional guidance and guidelines on what data is expected, what's the amount of data to be used. One of the things for Section 1 that you will also notice already in the technical guidelines as well as in the APR template is that we have increased the amount of characters as you have requested. Additional 1,000 characters have been added approximately to all of the sections. We have also updated the guidance on reporting of zero amounts. This is something that was causing issues for many member states for the first for financial year 2023, so for the first APRs. From financial year 2024 onwards, we will not expect you to provide these zero amounts for interventions that were not planned. However, of course, if there is an intervention that has been planned but hasn't been achieved, in those cases, of course, you will be expected to provide the zero. Or if you would have a planned milestone which you haven't achieved, of course, you will have to provide a zero, but otherwise no other zeros are expected from financial year 24 onwards. We will also provide you with a guidance on technical corrections. This is something that has been requested in the GREX meetings and something that came from our lessons learned sessions as well. There will also be guidance on the exact submission steps to be followed. So it's something that I just presented in the previous slide. And there will also be an update of the APR templates in some of the sections where it was necessary. Some of the things that we have worked on, for example, is in section 2.1. In some cases, you saw a ratio. In some cases, you saw the deviation percentage. So we have tried to create a uniform system for all of this, so you will only see the deviation to the milestone, which especially for financial year 24 will be important because it's also the first year of the biannual performance review. Some of the changes other than adding the co-financing rate is we also had to update section 2.5 on financial instruments and section 263 on transitional national aid, and also in section 2.4, which is on the voluntary measures under article 1346, we have added the possibility of you to provide justifications also if you use 1346A, not just 1346B, where this option was already provided. One thing that we presented in May was the possibility to simplify some aspects of the aggregated values. So we are talking about sections mainly 231 and 232. For these sections, our colleagues responsible for the APR module in SFC are working on some improvements for displaying of the units of measurement. The checks will be made against the CAP strategic plan and also improvements for the reporting of the sector and category, because these were the aspects where you reported problems most commonly. One of a potential major simplification that we have presented to you in the GREX meeting on 15th of May was a difference in the reporting of the O3 output indicator in sections 231 and 232. We have presented member states with two distinct possibilities. One of the possibility was to display O3 as a column to provide you with less data that you have to report in the XML and for you not to have to repeat the same data. And the second possibility would have been to display output indicator O3 in a way that it would be pre-filled as a row from the information that you provided in the output indicators before that. However, the actual number of beneficiaries would have to still be provided by the member states. We have asked all of you to respond to us and to tell us which of these options is more suitable to the setup of your IT systems, because we did not want to put additional pressure on the setup that you already have. We know it's difficult to get your IT systems correctly. You have tested them out already for the first financial year. We have listened to you, and based on the responses that we have received, neither of the options was actually taken up. What we received most commonly is the possibility of O3 displayed as a column seems to be a good solution. However, in most cases, you were worried about the impact on your IT systems. So we have decided not to go forward with this change, not to put additional pressure on the member states. Moving on to financial instruments, which I mentioned previously, for this part, as it was not fit for purpose for what we actually needed, for what needed to be presented for the financial instruments, we needed to add some additional columns. You can see them displayed in front of you right now. The member states will only be required to report the 21-digit budget code, based on which most of the information will actually be pre-filled from the Kaplan. So even though we have added, I think it's 6 additional columns, 4 of those will actually, or 3 of those will actually be pre-filled from the CAP strategic plan, not to put too much extra pressure on you and too much administrative burden. Coming to section 263 on transitional national aid, the original setup of this section was not compatible with the information that was provided in the CAP strategic plans. One of the main differences was that we were expecting to get the type of intervention from you, whereas transitional national aid is reported as a sector. So that was one of the main changes that we had to do, is just changing the name in the column and the type of information that needs to be provided. However, we have also added one extra column which will be pre-filled from the CAP strategic plan, and it's the sector-specific financial envelope, just for a better comparison of the data. Moving on to the validation rules. As I said before, there are 2 types of validation rules. You have the XML validation rules. There we will not be making any changes. They worked very well for the first financial year. At least we haven't received any specific complaints from any of the member states. However, when it comes to business validation rules, there we will definitely be doing some streamlining and mainly looking also at the warnings and error messages for them to provide you with more information on what actually needs to be checked. Some of the comments that we received most often from you, especially throughout January and early February, was that you received a warning message and don't understand what you need to change. So we will try to streamline the message as much as possible to give you more information and a better understanding as to what is the cause of the issue. Some of the warnings will also have to be elevated to errors to block member states from submitting the APRs. For example, this is going to be done in cases, as mentioned before, where the net amounts would not be carried over. 2 other cases are if there is a missing justification of deviation from milestones above 35%, as this will be a legal requirement for the biannual performance review. And the second case is justification of excesses of unit amounts above 50%. If those would be missing, again, you would receive an error message and would not be able to submit your annual performance report. We have also informed you that there is a possibility of simplifying potentially the warning messages that you get from these business validation rules. And one of the options was to actually group the warnings. So it would mean that you would get, for one specific business validation rule, you would only get 1 warning. However, if you open that warning, you would see all of the interventions or all of the sections that are affected by this warning. So you will still have multiple issues, but it would be grouped into one message. So potentially if you have 10 issues for the same warning, instead of getting 10 warning messages, you would get 1. But in that one warning message, you would specifically see all of the 10 sections where you have this issue. Based on the response of the member states, which was almost unanimous, this is actually the preferred option. So I'm happy to inform you that from financial year 24 onwards, the warning messages will be grouped for the APR. So hopefully that will provide some simplification. And our IT colleagues are already working on the improvements. In terms of the business validation rules, unfortunately, those will not be ready by 28th of June. We will be working on them still in July as well, so we aim to present them in September. And that is all from my side, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Maybe we will take a question if you have any regarding the presentation of Alexandra already. Or we can, any question, remark? Portugal?
Good morning, and thank you for this very useful presentation. Last week we sent an email with some doubts that we have about the APR and the annual accounts, the APR reporting. The email was sent on the 12th of June, and we sent two specific examples about our doubts. I will wrap up, try to wrap up our doubts, not to be very extensive. The first example and doubt that we have is about the apiculture. It's a real example because we declared a certain gross amount on the APR of 2023 and the reduction and the net payment aligned with the annual accounts. But there was a complaint from the beneficiary that led to a payment in financial year 2024. And we have a doubt about how do we report this payment. We have to report this payment along with the guideline in financial year, in the APR financial year 2024. But then we think that it would double the quantities reported, because the quantities were already reported on the APR 2023 and are going to be reported again on the 2024 APR. So this is the first doubt. Because on one hand, we have to report, according to the guidelines, all the payments on financial year 2024, but we can't double the amount, the quantities. The second doubt, the second example that we sent on the email was about bank accounts, incorrect bank accounts on a payment on direct aids, for example, Ajax, that is made on financial year 2024 related to calendar year 2023. So if we go along with the guideline, and because this payment is not going to be made actually in financial year 2024, we couldn't report it on the 2024 APR. But if we report it on the 2025 APR, I think it will double again the quantities. So these are our doubts, these two examples. A reduction made in 1 year and then a complaint and the payment made in the following year, and a bank account incorrect payments. Thank you. I don't know if perhaps you will answer our email by writing our doubts, but we thought this was a good place to transmit our doubts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can confirm that we received the questions. We are looking into it. We will respond in writing. However, one of the part of your questions was also that you would like to actually present these examples as something that could be helpful to other member states, if I'm not mistaken. And I can preliminarily tell you that we are working on a specific workshop that would be solely on APR that will potentially take place in September. We will let you know the exact date, hopefully in the Grex on 28th of June. It would be a workshop that would take place in person, and if you would be willing to present, that is definitely something that we would be grateful for and that we can discuss after the meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. another question? Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this really interesting presentation. And I have two questions. Last year we have big problems with the unit of measure, and you said that there is an improvement and it will be checked with the strategic plan. But for us, it depends on line on the upper. And will it be more coherent this year? And which abbreviation for unit measure we have to use? And I have a second question. It's about the error message when the validation of the annual account is done. We receive a lot of error message. Will it be possible to receive it before the sending of the annual accounts?
Thank you for the questions. So first, when it comes to unit of measurement, I think you meant the aggregated sections, right? So section 231, 232. The issue there was that we had a different setup for the aggregated values than for the rest of the sections in the APR, because all of the other sections were actually automatically checked against the CAPLAN, whereas for section 231 and 232, as there were so many combinations and it was so complex, the colleagues actually created a template that was in the background of the system on which the checks were being made for the units of measurement. However, we noticed that this was causing some of the issues as well. So we have diverted the system. It is being changed as we speak. It will not affect your IT systems at all. It's something that only affects the SFC system as it is and only affects the checks how they are being made. So there is no implication to your IT systems, but it's going to check everything against the CAPLAN, so it should be more accurate than it was. Because we really had issues with the standard unit of measurement and with the unit of measurement if it's provided in the national language, this special unit of measurement. So it's going to be checked directly against the CAPLAN, and hopefully then you will not get these error messages and the issues that we had. And for your second question, for error messages for annual accounts for net amount, unfortunately, you cannot get those before the data is transferred. This is one of the drawbacks of the systems. This is one of the things that I was trying to explain as well. And I understand that we received this comment from multiple member states that it would be better if the net amount could be transferred sooner. However, there the problem is that you have a high probability of mistakes and differences between the data that you submit for the annual accounts and the data that is in the APR. Because already now we saw that it was an issue for some of the member states to go with the sequence and to go with this revalidation. And if we would transfer the net amounts directly at every revalidation, it is possible that at the end, for example, once you submit the annual accounts, you wouldn't accidentally revalidate, and you could potentially have different amounts from the ones that we have in the annual accounts. That way, there is a bigger probability of errors and mistakes, and unfortunately, as we cannot transfer the data sooner, you cannot get the error message sooner, because the data is what creates the error message. So unfortunately, if we have this automated system, we couldn't find a different way of doing it, still assuring the quality of the data and the correctness of the data. Thank you.
Spain, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, I would like first to thank the Commission for organizing this workshop and also for the presentation and the explanations given. Well, maybe you know that we have, well, paying agencies and coordinating bodies. We have a learning network to share experience and knowledge. And we have a working group specialized in this issue in APR. We sent a few weeks ago to Unit C1 the conclusions of our work we made where 24 member states shared their experiences during the first APR. We classified the issues in 3 categories. The one, methodological issues, the second one on the procedure, and the third one on technical issues, namely linked to SFC platform. Well, today I think we received some explanations relating to procedural and technical issues, but we miss more technical work about methodological issues, in my opinion. In relation with the intervention of our Portuguese colleague, we consider that the methodology in general terms is good, but we face some circumstances and situations that we don't know how to deal with. For instance, recoveries during the same year of the payment or in subsequent years. For instance, administrative errors. For instance, the issue of the bank accounts, when the bank account is not correct and the bank recover the payment, you have to account the payment and you have to repay again. Also, one of the main issues for us, at least in Spain, is avoiding double counting. In case the unit you don't have a unique code identifying animals, identifying beehives, for instance. In Spain, there is no unique code for each beehive, but we have to avoid double counting in case of beehives, not just during the financial year, but during the subsequent years, because the result indicator is accumulative during the whole period. Also in case of surfaces, because sometimes surfaces that we have to avoid double counting are not within the Ajax system. Also the issue of the units of measurement that Belgium has also pointed out. So, and another issue is the question that the changes in methodology have an impact on IT systems. So we think it is necessary to reinforce the technical work on methodological issues that we face, not just procedural or technical issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we have received the note. It was very helpful also for our reflections, so we thank you very much for all the work that went into it. When it comes to methodological issues, we have heard you. We understand that, for example, for the cover note, there are various versions, and I know that you're struggling with the versions of the technical guidelines often, and also the cover note and the differences that they are causing. This will be one of the issues that we will try to address in the workshop in September. We will also try to find a way to provide you, because I know one of the complaints that you put in your note and that also we received from other member states was that the documentation is often quite hard to be identified. So I know that we have prepared this APR folder in Circa BC. However, if that becomes confusing or it's not clear, we can try to always keep just the most up-to-date versions. For example, I had a look at it yesterday, and for technical guidelines, you have all of the versions there. If this is not helpful, if you just want the most up-to-date version there, or if you want a specific folder within that, a subfolder, that will state that these are most up-to-date versions, or these are the main ones to look at, where we would put, for example, the cumulative Q&As. We can even put the cover note there. I can discuss it with the colleagues, and the technical guidelines. If that would be helpful and help you identify the methodology a bit better, we will look into that. But there will also be a presentation on the cover note and on aggregated values and the impact on the APR expected in the workshop in September. So I hope this will be helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, I have just received a question from my expert. So, yes, it's about the co-financing rate you mentioned. The question is if you have a payment in the new cap on one budget code and also a recovery of close period, which co-financing rate do you put in the APR?
Thank you. So in the APR, it's always the co-financing rate of the intervention under which you are declaring this recovery. So it's always the same one. So it's the one from the CAP strategic plan. It's not the one from the close period, it's the one from the CAP strategic plan for that given particular intervention. Thank you.
If there is no other question so far, I will leave the floor to Paul Torske, who will present you the system.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Paul from Unit C1 as well, CAP Strategic Plan Coordination. I will show you today the SFC 2021 system and specifically the APR and how you upload the documents and also how it's been submitted from the member state side of point of view. So here I have SFC test environment open. Here I already went into the APR, which I find here under monitoring, and here you can see the annual performance report. As a member state, you would create the report, and the first page you will then see is this page that you see in front of you now. So in terms of uploading the XML file, which creates the basis for section 2 of the APR, you would have to go under Documents, which you see here, and here you have the possibility to add a file. You would then give it a title, and here under Document Type you choose either other member state documents, which you see now. This is if you want to have any supporting documents submitted along with the APR. If not, you would choose the other option, which is XML import file for quantitative data imports. And if you scroll down, you here have the possibility to add the file itself. So here I would browse in my computer and find the relevant XML file. I would also have to give it a title. And then here I would click Save. I've already uploaded my XML file, so in this case I will just click Cancel. So here under Documents you would then see your XML file. Here you already see the one I uploaded, and also the status for the file. So if the status is OK, then the system didn't find any errors or submission mistakes for the file. If there is any errors in your XML file, you would then get an error code with also the details where the potential mistakes in the XML file can be found. Under Documents, this is also here. Here you would also find the potential acceptance or observation letters from the Commission when it has been assessed. So this is just for your information that after it has been submitted, you would also find the letters from the Commission under this section. So now that I have uploaded my XML file, I can also see, if I go under section 2, I would be able to see the different data that was in my XML file that's being visualized also under section 2. Here I also have the possibility to manually write in comments on deviation from the milestone that I would do here by clicking on the pen. And here I have, in this case, I have 1,000 characters to write. As you can see here on the right, there's a countdown to the maximum amount of characters. Under section 1, which is the narrative part of the annual performance report, Here you would have the text box where you can write your assessment on the different sections. As Alexandra said, we increased the characters allowed. So here in this case you would have 11,000 characters allowed, and also when you start writing you will see that the countdown is starting. It's a bit small, but in this case 10,995 left. When you upload the XML file, the system also runs the validation rules, and on the bottom left corner you can see the different result from this validation rules. So in this case I would have 19 passed validation rules, but I also in this case have 75 warnings. I can see the details of these warnings by clicking on them. And in this case, they have not been grouped as Alexander said that they will be. So here, for example, we have error code number 10, but there are several of them because they are not just one specific one. There is already one validation rule which grouped them, so I will show you how it will be looking from the next financial year. So here for code number 180, you see that the codes have been grouped into to be under the same warning error. And then in my case I do not have any error codes, so you see here there are 0, so there are no blocking validation rules, so the system does not block my APR, meaning that I can validate and send my APR. So in this case, if I wanted to submit the APR to the Commission, I would then click here on Validate. And here you can see that I already have a blocking error now that I run my my validation because the final date of the submission have already been passed. So by that it has already blocked my APR, but in your case when you submit before the deadline, you would then be able to submit it after validating your APR. So that is all from my side. If you have any question.
The test is for financial year 2023. We can already test for financial year 2024.
No, so the test is only now for financial year 2023. They are still working on the improvements. So for financial year 2024, it's not ready yet. In July.
If there is no other question yet, we will give the floor to Marina Zolotskov for Unit H3, who will present the reconciliation, presentation on reconciliation.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. My name is Marina Zolotkov, and I'm working in Unit H3, the performance clearance. So the main source of the annual performance clearance is the information that we get from the annual performance report. And my short presentation will focus on the reconciliation. And in the afternoon, in the plenary session, I will give a more detailed presentation about the annual performance clearance, the state of play, the lessons learned, the next year's performance clearance and the points of attention, and the CBE's role in this performance clearance exercise. So the annual performance clearance is based on the information that we receive from the annual performance report and the information that is validated by the certification bodies. The annual performance clearance objective is to look at each intervention with the declared expenditure, whether it has a corresponding output. Only those interventions with access of the average value in the CAP strategic plan have been analyzed if they have justifications and what these justifications provide. The acceptance of those justifications was based on the CAP strategic plan, which was agreed on in course of agreement of by 9 of April. We have identified several issues as from our first year of the annual performance report, which are as follows. The annual performance report submission is sometimes not following the sequence, or was not following the sequence. First, the submission of the annual accounts, and then the submission of the annual performance report. There was some completion of the APR issues that included missing planned unit amount or the reference unit amount for the expenditure which was declared in the APR. The intervention did not which was not planned for the financial year of the 2023, was actually implemented in the year 2023. However, in this case, in the CAP strategic plan, the reference unit amount was missing. There were also missing justifications for those interventions with the exceeding of the realized unit amount from the planned unit amount. We also identified the missing corresponding output for the expenditure declared. There was incorrect data that was identified in the annual performance report, such as the incorrectly calculated and reported output indicator, which should be in line with the type of the intervention. There was also some mathematical errors in the CAP strategic plan. For example, there was a wrong denominator use, which has artificially decreased the planned unit amount, which gave an excess of the realized unit amount from the reference unit amount. As well, we had an error in the unit of measurement. For example, instead of the number of the actions used, there were the number of the bookkeepers that was used. There were also mistakes in the administrative work. For instance, the money that were paid on a different sub-measure, they were booked on a wrong budget line, which has an impact on the annual accounts. We would like to remind you that the annual performance clearance is not about the performance review. It is about the clearance of accounts. We are not looking as part of the performance clearance at how the money have been spent. It is not it is not part of the exercise. Only the expenditure which is part of the public expenditure has been analyzed. We are not looking at the national expenditure. And the negative variance of the realized unit amount from the planned unit amount is not our subject. It's not falling on our radar. Sorry. So we are just looking at the positive deviations of the realized unit amount without taking into account any threshold. As per the regulation EU, there is no threshold, so any deviation as 0.001% has to have a justification. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Any question on this part? Any elements that you would like to raise? Nothing so far? Any point as well on any certification body or the experience of the certification body regarding the annual performance report or the checks they did on that? No. Yes, Austria.
I received a question of the paying agency of Austria, which is attending online to the first presentation regarding file 7 about the co-financing rate. They want to know if it will be visible in future, how much. So if you see this line in future. And in Austria, there are some, for example, the Burgenland has another co-financing rate, and will this also be visible, or if it is different between the regions? And they are also stating that it would be helpful if the net amount would be yeah, transparent. I don't know. Yeah, sorry, I don't know exactly what they mean. Okay, but I hope the first question is understandable. Or should I?
If you could maybe repeat, thank you and sorry.
It's about the file 7 in the first presentation. There is the co-financing rate, and they want to know if it is visible in the future, if it will be visible in the future.
Yes, indeed, that would be the intention. So the template will be changed, both the input template and what you saw is already the actual version once of the output one, but we will actually request you to provide this data and it will be visible in the APR module. So when you open the role development interventions, just like you see the output, you will be able to see directly underneath it the co-financing rate, the percentage that you provide, and then the net amounts, and then all of the other aspects. So yes, it will be visible.
And because in Austria there are some interventions where the co-financing rate isn't the same for different regions, how is this visible?
Yes, so we are looking into it for now. However, if member states have any proposals on how best to tackle this, we are happy to hear those out as well. We are looking into the best possibilities. In some cases, average might be a good solution, but potentially not in all cases. So it's definitely something that would be best to discuss. And if you have a particular example and a way to calculate it that you would like to provide, we are happy to hear it out. Thank you.
Friends, please.
Yes, thank you. I have a very small question concerning the performance clearance. You said that you had identified 7 problems after this year, and one of them is missing justifications. Just to be sure for next year, for our next APR, you mean here missing justification when the unit amount was was more than 50% of the planned unit amount. That's it.
Yes, indeed. So if there is any deviation of the realized unit amount from the planned unit amount, then as per the regulation EU, there should be a justification that provides the quantitative and the qualitative information. So in total, we identified 7 of those cases.
Spain, please.
Thank you again. I would like to do a comment regarding the last presentation, because you said that performance clearance is not performance review, and it has more to do with clearance of accounts. And I have to say that I do not agree with this comment, because when you have a difference, a deviation from the planning amounts, there are many factors, or there might be many factors involved. For instance, the design of the intervention, namely in non-Ajax interventions, the aid application, the eligibility conditions sometimes, the kind of operations or projects that apply for the aid, for the CAP support. And I don't think performance clearance is a question of accounts. It's a question of the implementation of the interventions and the final results with, as I said, namely when the outputs are very varied, as in the case of non-Ajax interventions. And in this exercise, not only paying agencies or coordinating bodies or certifying bodies have to deal with, but also managing authorities and all organisms involved in the implementation and the design, which is quite important, the design of the interventions. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So as it was included in my presentation, indeed, the annual performance clearance is not about the performance review. We are not analyzing how the milestones and the targets are met. We are analyzing if reported expenditure has a corresponding output, and if those deviations of the realized unit amount, they are justified. So it's not related to any performance review. This is part of the annual performance review.
Netherlands, please.
Thank you. To follow up on the comments of Spain, I think there are three separate procedures. That's the financial clearance, the performance clearance, and the performance review. And as is stated in the presentation now, I think the performance clearance is connected to the financial clearance, but those are two separate procedures, I think.
Thank you. So, indeed, there are three different procedures: financial clearance, performance clearance, and then the performance review. What we have tried to indicate is the lessons learned from the first year. And what we have felt, read, and as you know, we have done technical meetings with member states based on the invitation and the reach out we did in the AFC, where we indicated we have sent letters to member states. In many of these meetings with the member state, it was appearing that the first reflex was like, yes, but we have reviewed our plan and we are very performing and we are very this as a member state. And there, on that basis, and I think my colleagues have also repeated that often in the Grexes that went from July last year, I think, systematically, that there is maybe a misconception, not a conception, but very quickly when member states have to justify an exceeding, they jump on, yeah, but we're still performing. We don't say that you're not performing. That's the message that my colleague wanted to get across. We're not judging whether it's performing, whether it's the right unit amount, whether it's the right output. That has not a place in the performance clearance. That is why there is the performance review, and I've been on certain missions, and there's member states are saying, look, you don't have to come here and tell me what I'm doing on my plan, because that's the performance review. And quite rightly, they do so. Of course, if the situation is as such that at the time the plan was made with assumptions, and these assumptions are not true anymore in the current year, they could serve as a justification or an indication of. The regulation also explicitly requires member states to indicate in their APR if there is an exceeding, the justification and the measures they have taken or will take as to avoid it from reoccurring. That's clearly mentioned in Article 134. I don't know what, I will look it up if you want, but it's there. And as part of that remedial action, there could be CSP review, etc. But what we want to indicate to you, and as the French delegation has asked, please tell us what as to avoid in future is, you're absolutely right to say what you want in your APR. But please concentrate on justifying why there is an excess. We know that you try to perform. We know that you try to follow the plan. That's not the thing. It's about justifying the excess. The justification could be a change in the plan or something else, but it's very clear that we do not, as performance clearance, enter on the pathway of performance review and biannual review or whatever. That's very clear.
Netherlands for a follow-up question.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question about the justification. As you already said, it's obliged to give a justification when there is an excess of 50%. But in fact, there needs to be a justification every time, even if the excess is only €1 single. And another question concerning the justification. In the format in SFC, there's, I think, only 1,000 characters to give a justification. In order to prevent a lot of work in the performance clearance procedure, shouldn't there be more room in the APR to give a justification when we sent it on 15 February?
Okay, thanks.
please. Portugal? Microphone, please.
Sorry, my colleagues who are attending this workshop online are saying that they couldn't hear the last intervention. Perhaps the microphone was off. No? Yes, sorry.
So is your request not for me to repeat it? I will be short. The 50%.
Thank you.
The 50% has started to live a life on its own. The 50% in the legislation is there for the suspension under Article 40/2. That's what the regulation says. That's why it is mandatory to provide it. On the other hand, we have the legislation which is indicating that the performance clearance, as the Dutch delegation has indicated, is about finding corresponding output with amounts declared in the annual declaration. And for that, if there is a deviation in excess on the average unit amount or the planned unit amount, there needs to be a justification. The reason why we asked in this first year for every deviation a justification, and we send you letters sometimes for what you may consider small amounts or non-material amounts, is that because the legal guidance we have received was that with the shall and with that construction in the legislation, you must have a justification.
Spain, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry to ask for the floor again, but I would like to know more about the criteria on which the Commission is going to base their decision if a justification is correct or not. For instance, if you have one intervention for investment and you receive 8 applications of several projects with very high budget, higher than the average unit amount you foreseen in your CAP plan, so that you have less output but of higher budget. So is this, for instance, a correct justification, and the Commission is going to consider that this deviation is justified, or is going to prepare a kind of guidelines of note or interpretation criteria to consider the justification is correct, so there is no problem with this deviation? Thank you.
Okay. It's not that I do not want to reply, but I don't know in how far, if we reply to these questions here, what are we going to discuss this afternoon in the plenary, where everybody is there. So hold on to the question, I would say. Your question is legitimate, there's no doubt about that, but I would try to keep it for this afternoon as to avoid that. I don't know if every member state is represented here so that everybody can hear it ex cathedra and not in camera.
Friends, please.
Thank you. Following the discussion, I would just have a short request, maybe. We talked about performance review, and if I'm not mistaken, this year we will have to, is a year of performance review. So I think for us it would be very useful to have in advance in a GREX like today some information on how it will the performance review work, and there is behind action plans. So how these action plans will be settled, because I think we don't want to have the kind of surprise we have today or we had with the performance clearance letters with the performance review. So for us, it will be very useful, I think, to know in advance how this performance review will work on financial year 2024.
Thank you for the question. Indeed, for the APRs that will be submitted by the 15th of February 2025, so the ones for financial year 24, they will be for the first time the biannual performance review exercise. For this, we are preparing a guidance, and our intention is to share the first draft of this guidance, hopefully 11th of July in the GREX meeting. Okay. Thank you.
So if there is no other question so far, what we can do is a short break, 10-15 minutes. We will prepare some kind of summary of the discussions that we may afterwards present you to know if everyone's agree with that before the presentation in the plenary session. Okay. Thank you. So see you at, let's say, 10:45. thanks for joining us back. Before we go through the brief summary of the discussion that we prepared, is there any other question on this on the subjects of the submission and reconciliation of the annual performance report? Because, well, normally one important point in the whole system in place or in the model in place is that we need the certification body to verify the performance reporting, and we would like to know if any CB had some specific question that they would like to ask on the subject. Sweden.
So, thank you. I'm representing the CB for Sweden, and it's not a question, it's more of a proposal or inquiry to share or compile a best practice for the CB's work on the assessment of the annual of the APR in the future. It is technical and new, and I think there are gains to be made in developing an effective method on or for all the CBs on the performance of their work, maybe through the work of Learning Network or similar, or perhaps there is one, however it's not of my knowledge, still just a proposal or inquiry for the best practice. Thank you.
Thank you. The proposal is noted. Any other question or even question that the person attending from remotely would have sent you? No. Okay. So, for a brief summary of what we noted of the discussion. So, we prepare those short slides. So, in the plenary, we will present, first of all, and so the three presentations which were given in the workshop. So we'll just do naming those presentations, or not going again through them, but just indicating that this was presented. We have some clarification point or just brief summary of what was presented. So first of all, in the first presentation, a detailed overview of the submission steps for the annual performance report, the state of play of the assessment of the annual performance report for financial year 23, and in particular, a point on the reporting of amounts recovered. Then we have a point on the update in the submission of the annual performance report for financial year 24. So in particular on the co-financing rate, the system improvement and the validation rules. We took note also on the question from Portugal, Spain, Belgium, Austria, and I forgot France as well. So regarding several points on the co-financing and aggregated value, the error message, and the methodological aspects. The next steps that we discussed were an expert group on 28th of June 2024, where there will be a full presentation of the revised technical guideline and specific workshop to be announced in September. The testing environment with the updated annual performance module will also be available in July 2024. And after, we made also a point on the clarification on the processes, so mainly coming from the after the second presentation, we will indicate that indeed there is 3 separate procedures to be considered: the financial clearance, the performance clearance, and the performance review. Regarding the performance clearance, where H3 intervened and gave its presentation, the Commission examines the justification for any excess deviation or absence of corresponding output. And on this specific point, there might be further development in the afternoon session. So there is, in particular, the question of Spain, which will be raised, which might be raised again at that moment. And finally, on performance review, we indicate that there will be a first draft of the guidance submitted on the 11th of July expert group. So, if there is no, well, is there some comment or elements that should be added, or does everyone agree with this presentation? Did I forget one point? I will add the proposal from the Swedish CB regarding the compilation of best practices. So that's also a point that I will add after this part. Is there anything else? In case of if any question would come after in the afternoon, there will be the minutes of the expert group meeting, but there will be also the question of the Q&A document, which might address any questions that would come afterwards on this. So I encourage you, if you have contact with a person attending remotely, to provide any feedback or to prepare even the feedback. So we can agree to present the summary as it is now. Okay. And well, Alexandra, Marina, any other comments? Okay. So if there is no other point, we can break the session for the moment. Thank you. The plenary session will be at 11:45. Please, friends. Yes. No, okay. Okay. Yes, the plenary will be in 1D.